Hello, 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 beautiful soul family. Welcome back to another connection point in our series of meeting our soul family, hearing their story, and seeing how if they can do it, you can do it too. Today, I am introducing you to our beautiful soul sister, Vanessa. Vanessa Soul is a soul purpose and career guide. Her life purpose is helping humanity increase their quality of life and purpose mastery even during and after this AI transition. Whether you're redefining your career, seeking deeper fulfillment, or ready to embrace your soul's calling, Vanessa will help you create a legacy of purpose, alignment, and limitless potential through astrology and human design. So make sure you stick around to the end. Vanessa is offering free 15-minute sessions, so you're going to want to catch how to snag one of those at the end of this video. So let's dive right in. Here's Vanessa. Welcome, 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 Vanessa. I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome to the Vibe Mentor Soul family. We're so excited to meet you and share your story with everyone.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's a pleasure to be here, and I love your vibration.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. So tell us more about you. What do you do?
So, I'm an intuitive healer, and I also help people get clarity on their life purpose and highest career opportunities through astrology and human design.
Just so exciting and fun. I know it's an important factor to be able to understand your signature and blueprint. So we're so excited to have you here, and we look forward to learning more from you. So how did you get into this? What was your childhood like? How did you get into healing and decide to step into your purpose?
Yeah, thank you for that. Childhood was interesting. I found out that I was gifted and that I could, I was clairaudient and clairvoyant, obviously not knowing that those were like a thing, but fully experiencing it, having my quote unquote imaginary friends, my spirit guides, having visions, having very vivid dreams, almost predicting what my parents would say or we're being lost when we didn't have GPS back in the 90s, kind of like lost, as a kid, like, oh, we need to go this way. Just having those intuitive abilities come on very early. It was interesting. It wasn't completely accepted by my family. So, the micro trauma there was like shrinking myself. Knowing that it worried my mom when I would speak to my spirit guides, or she was concerned I had inherited, a mental illness, the schizophrenia from my grandmother, or that something else was happening. And my mom was very into religion and Christianity. So there was that pressure to fit into that box too. So there was a lot going on in childhood, when I look back, but I was a very reflective kid, very reflective. So it's almost like I kind of knew that I was different and that it would be okay one day, interestingly enough. Also in my childhood, there was some unfortunate, experiences with people around me and some sexual trauma that I did not remember until I was 30. And I suspect that probably happened around like 5 or 6. And then it was when I was 30 that some of those memories started to come back.
And how did you address that or start to heal that? How did you discover that?
Very interesting. Yeah. So, not having any knowledge of it, I felt really called to go to a ayahuasca retreat center, not knowing that it was that what ayahuasca was, not knowing what plant medicine was, not even knowing that they served that there. I had just got into real estate, and it was my birthday, and it was one of it was divinely guided because I made the decision so quick to go to this retreat center for like a full week, a full 7 days. And I didn't do much research. I remember calling trying to get information, and they said, "Oh yeah, we do plant medicine here." And I just thought that was like herbs and vitamins. I didn't really know what I was signing up for, that, but that was perfect because I didn't Google anything. I didn't ask for advice. I didn't go listen to other people's ayahuasca experiences. I had no expectations. And the type of person I am, I'm always up for a challenge. When I did arrive at the center, when they were giving me a tour of the grounds, they were kind of talking about the ceremony that would be happening that night. And it was a special ceremony because they had a really important or significant shaman coming in, that type of thing. and that it was going to be an extended ceremony. It was going to be like a 12-hour one. So I went like straight into the deep end. I was like, oh, whoa, I didn't even know about this. Like, can I participate? And the doctor checked me out and said, yep, you just got to hydrate a little bit more before the ceremony, but you're good to go. And so yeah, I just dived in. And there was the first night, there was a little bit of resistance. Like, I literally feel like I had a panic attack because just releasing that sense of control that I had hung on to for so long, not knowing what was going to come up. I had when we repress memories or anything, when we repress or suppress things in our life, it is meant to protect us. It's not always a negative thing. But there is a sense of control, like false sense of control that we could feel that we have. Like everything's at bay, nothing's bothering me. I'm fine, in this little container. But when that started to crack open, I remember kind of just having that panic attack. I mean, I don't know if it was a full blown one, but it was an intense one it was the most intense moment of panic that I had experienced up until that life or up until that time. But anyways, I mean, that passed. People kind of helped me navigate through that. And then eventually I just surrendered. And the first time I was just shaking so much, and it wasn't painful. It was actually so relieving. During that ceremony, I was laying down very comfortable, but just my body was vibrating. And if you know anything, and I know you know all about trauma, Rebecca, but for anyone listening, if you know anything, when our body needs to release trauma through movement, and that trembling and that shaking can be a way to do that. And I was doing that for hours and hours and hours, not knowing why, and not knowing that it was a trauma release or an emotional release. But it played out several days later. Then mentally, in my experiences, I started to see things in my childhood throughout my life that had happened. But I was so guided on how to really navigate through them, accept them. I remember the universe really guiding me and saying, can you accept this? And I would say, yes, I could accept this. And then it moved me into a different portal of that experience during the ceremony. It would take me to another part, like, can you accept this? Yes. It's hard. I don't understand it, but I'll accept it. It was kind of like I was going through these different levels. So that's how it came up. And after that experience, I came home and I was a completely different person. I didn't change my number, but it was almost as if I had did because I had blocked a lot of people. There a lot of social scenes that I was involved in completely just shut down. It was like an overnight shift and change.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing how trauma healing ends up becoming an identity shift?
Yes.
And it is really fascinating. I'm glad you mentioned the shaking because the body keeps the score and the trauma is in the body. And without that release from the body, we can't release that old identity. And it's so fascinating how I didn't believe in quantum leaping before trauma healing, which is so strange that you wouldn't think that one facilitates the other. But it actually, for me, it was those moments of releasing physically that allowed me to step into that new identity. So thank you for sharing your story with us. I know you mentioned a little bit around the religion, and I know control was definitely a big one for me as a high achiever, but so was people pleasing and fawning, which is an interesting connection there, how we don't realize how subtly in our people pleasing, we are trying to control things. So how did you stumble into the understanding of some of these trauma responses?
Yeah, just through my own journey, I had, after a couple years after that ayahuasca experience, I had just got mentors and shamans and coaches and healers to help me along my path, and all of it was helpful. And I think just combining what I was doing with them with my own research, and studying the nervous system, because I suspected that I really had, a limited capacity with my nervous system. And then, yeah, and then really understanding the fawn response. And people talk about fight and flight all the time, in mainstream discussions. But unless you're listening to some content or a podcast or an article that's really designed to intentionally hone in on trauma, they're not mentioning the fawn response, as well, or as much. So yeah, understanding that, and what it looked like the people pleasing, and it's a way to feel safe. If you had, at least in my case, I had some trauma come up, and as a kid, I didn't know what else to do but to just kind of let it happen. Very, very young kid. And that was my way of staying safe. And so, and even though those repressed memories started to become repressed over time and I didn't remember, it was a program in my life. It was like, uh-oh, let's just stay safe. Let's not argue with this person. Let's keep the peace. This will be over pretty soon. So that's how that fawn response kind of kept getting reinforced. And then the people pleasing, like just agreeing to avoid conflict, just saying yes when you don't want to, or not having boundaries because your boundary might upset the other person. It is a protective mechanism, and like you said, a way to control.
And it's so fascinating how that keeps us from our purpose. Like we wouldn't think that being easygoing or being passive or being agreeable would be a problem. It seems like a very virtuous personality characteristic, even though for me, I realized that it seemed like at the time in my healing journey, 90% of who I thought I was a trauma response. And it ends up being the mask that covers and suppresses your innate signature, who you were made to be. So what did that look like for you? What was your journey around education and career? And how did you start to notice how these things were holding you back and heal that so that you could start to step into your purpose?
Yeah, great question. And before I answer that, I'll just add in one more thing. It's like I was
Sure.
a people pleaser, like with my like people who were close to me, like my mom or like, family, things like that. But like with strangers, it's like it was almost like a overcompensating. Like I would be really, in some instances, rude, blocked off, not letting people hold the door open for
Mm-hmm.
me. It was like everything was like an inconvenience. Like I got it. I'll take care of it. Excuse me, move. With no smile. I'm smiling now to kind of lighten it up, but that was like that protective personality. And so there was different, it was showing up different ways. I felt like when I wasn't around family, I wasn't people pleasing, but then I would go all the way to the other extreme of not having compassion for others or myself and not connecting with people. So just kind of to really give some more detail there, what that looked like for me.
As you started to go through your education and your career and step into your purpose, what was it like to recognize these tendencies and to heal them so that you could step into your purpose?
Yeah, powerful question. I started to realize I had so many coping mechanisms just to get through the day, just to operate. And stress was a big part of my reality. And I think subconsciously I knew that it wasn't the true me. Like it was, it was bottled up emotions, or it was something that I knew it was unfolding, and I kind of knew that it would happen at its own time. And then I was also in a romantic relationship that was really stressful within itself. I don't like to say the word abusive relationship, but or toxic, just because uh, I rather just reflect on what like how it felt to me. So it was a very stressful relationship, and I think during and after that really showed like it put up a mirror to me, like the people pleasing behaviors and even the desperation that I had at that time, just to I just wanted to be with someone to feel accepted, or I felt like I had to give up a lot just to feel like I was loved, or just to have a partner or to have a boyfriend, even with all the drama that we had. And so I just started to kind of sit with some of that. And I thought, I don't think that this is me. I think that this is just who I had to become in order to survive. And even though I had that recognition, I just started to release, or at least I had the intention to release some of these coping mechanisms one by one. One of them was, I was prescribed Adderall, when I was younger, but in my adult life, I started to take a lot more of it, became a little bit more of a dependency because it suppressed the stress. It suppressed some of my personality too. So being with that in that stressful relationship it felt like I could be more in the fawn response if I was on my medicine, because there'd be less conflict or something like that, which wasn't true. There's other things, issues that the person had with me being on that medicine. And I was overdoing it, by the way. So I had kind of went above my prescribed dose at the time. But then I made the decision to release that. And that was a journey within itself. And then there was alcohol. That was another thing. And then there was partying, because that allowed me to escape my reality. So I got caught up in the whole Hollywood party scene, very heavenly, dated celebrities, the whole thing. And that was after I had got out of that stressful relationship, but I was trying to discover myself, and with the partying, it was almost like I was kind of trying to free myself from feeling so restricted. So there was like this rebalancing that was trying to happen. And I just kept following the crumbs. And then it was when I went celibate one year that really helped. It really helped clear out a lot of the distractions, the noise. Um, and actually, I think it was almost 2 years that I was celibate, and it allowed me to come back to myself. And some of that stress started to reduce. The drinking reduced heavily at that time. Now I don't drink at all, but at that time I had like at least cut in half. So it was just like this process of elimination. And then I started to experience different parts of myself.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love too how you're willing to speak to the need for coping mechanisms, that when we're masking and we're not who we truly are, there's a part of us that has to be silenced to sustain that. And many times a lot of guilt and shame will come with whatever coping mechanisms we have leaned on. And it's important not to beat ourselves up over that those parts are just trying to survive and they don't know a better way. So thank you for sharing that. How did you start to step into your purpose from that state?
Yes, being in community, being in
Mm.
retreat centers and healing communities, that was a huge part of my journey, because then I learned that I could be the individual. I didn't have to be in that fawn response. I could go into the ecstatic dances and dance crazy, and you'll I found that I received appreciation and connection with people, as my authentic self was coming alive. And so, yeah, just being in community, and then that allowed me to explore some of my gifts. So in those communities, I had friends, and um, I had started to do, energy clearings on homes. And then with some of my friends, they volunteered to kind of let me do some energy clearings on them. And after a couple of those, we were like, whoa, they had great results. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I wasn't doing traditional Reiki. I was kind of doing, um, I was just doing energy healing. I didn't know what to call it. But later I found out it was a different modality. I found out I had channeled reconnective healing, which is a known modality by Dr. Eric Pearl. But yeah, just experimenting. And then eventually, I knew that I wanted to go into healing and coaching. And so things kind of lined up for me at the time in my real estate business, and COVID helped. COVID helped in a huge way where, when COVID happened, um, a lot of people just weren't in the market anymore. They weren't in the market to buy. They weren't in the market to sell. There were a lot of people buying and selling homes that, because of the pandemic, maybe they needed a bigger house because of COVID. So, there was a shift in supply and demand, beyond my normal scope of clients, but it allowed me to also adjust. I had left LA and I moved to Austin, Texas, and I was able to continue even though I was doing real estate part time, I was able to do everything because this was 2020, and I was able to do home showings and send the clients to the homes, or whatever it was, and do it all virtually, because that was just the norm then. Clients weren't really meeting up with the realtor at that time. Everyone was kind of very separate. So it worked for me, and I was able to start to discover, if I could support someone in a session, what would it look like? And I had my own team of people, coaches and healers and shamans helping me. So I was kind of just receiving the space that they were holding for me, and then kind of creating my own for others at the same time.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Would you say that your trauma healing was part of that gateway to opening that? You mentioned connection. And I know that sometimes without trauma healing, we're struggling with connection.
Yes. Yes, it was in so many ways, because I also felt like, um, I felt like there was a higher demand for the spiritual type of work that we all do to help people with trauma, as opposed to some of the traditional
Mm-hmm.
methods like talk therapy. Not to say it doesn't work or that it's not helpful, but there's just a higher demand for these deeper, more energetic practices because they address the energy, they address somatics, they address the soul and the subconscious and soul retrievals and past life regressions. It really provides a comprehensive integration and yeah, understanding the trauma that I went through. I wanted to help people that were also in my position. Um, and just to rewind, I think before I really discovered what my trauma was, I was really discouraged to even go to talk therapy because when I had a couple experiences when I was like 13 in anger management where I just was kind of playing game. I lied the whole time and the therapist believed me. It was a block. Like I wouldn't let her in. So I just,
Yep.
kind of was I don't know what to call it. I didn't feel safe, right? And then also I didn't want to get re-traumatized and I just I wanted something deeper. I felt like just talking about it can might have just made me feel worse about certain things. So I really just wanted to learn as much as possible from the universe and from therapy, from modalities like that you and I know of, like IFS therapy and all of those, to really help someone in a more supportive function integrate trauma.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So I'm glad that you mentioned connection because it is so important when we have complex trauma, childhood trauma, sexual trauma, any trauma that is facilitated by another person or through another person, we tend to start to fear relationship and connection.
Mhm.
And I love that you mentioned your trauma healing and stepping into your purpose, excuse me, and stepping into your purpose was facilitated through connection. I've found personally the divine moves through people. And without that connection or being stuck in hermit mode or hiding our light, we're not able to step into your purpose. So what was it like for you to heal your relationships with others and to feel safe in relationship with others? What was most helpful for you?
Yeah, the thing that was most helpful was learning how to trust myself again, too.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I could trust myself to either to make a decision not to basically if I could trust myself not to be in the fawn response
Mm-hmm.
and to be present and honest with what I want in the moment, then I can make a decision on, do I say yes? Do I say no? Do I participate with this person or do I not? And so when I learned how to exert boundaries and my willpower and my choices and my decisions, and also trust those decisions, even if they weren't logically backed
Mm-hmm.
by the science of my mind, just trust the feeling, then I was like, okay, this works out. And then just over time, even just by trusting the healers and coaches that were helping me with very sensitive information, um, but just knowing that, okay, I decide if I need to end the session early or if I don't want to sign up with this person again. It sounds silly, but I had to remind myself like that I had that choice. That's the ball was in my court. I did have sovereignty over that. And then I knew like, okay, then I just trust myself to have the awareness. And I never had to do that. I had great people supporting me, but that was just me working through some of my previous blocks. Again, that harsh person, that girl that didn't want anyone to open up the door, didn't want help, or I was in that toxic masculine energy because I felt like I couldn't trust anyone to be, close to me because I'm doing everything myself. So yeah, rebuilding those relationships with people, and then like I said, just learning how to trust myself first was the foundation for that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I think you bring up a really important point too, that many times, at least in my journey, I felt like I have to do this or I have to do that in order to have an online business. There's this checklist of things that you have to do. And recognizing that this is part of our trauma, this suppression of self, suppression of needs and desires, doing it the right way or the way you should do it versus creating a life that supports you and nourishes you, and a willingness to fight for yourself and to ask for what you need and to say, no, I'm not going to do it that way because that doesn't align with my soul. So thank you for speaking to that, because I think it's important for everyone to know that you get to design a life that nourishes you and have your needs met. So
Yes, yes. And even though I was on the journey of healing those people pleasing tendencies, I got to the point where I felt like I had it handled in my personal life. But when I started my business as a healer and a coach, it really started to show,
yeah.
right? Taking on clients that I wasn't aligned with, my prices not being, adequate and sufficient for me at the time. Um, feeling like I had to do all this extra work or overwork myself or self-sacrifice or be the martyr,
Yeah.
those types of things, or even taking on a little bit of responsibility for like what happened after the program or after the session. So
Yeah.
I had to learn like a whole nother set of boundaries and balancing that out and accountability, and then also letting people go on their own path, just staying in my lane as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing that you are enough no matter what, and it's not up to you to save people. I know I had the martyr complex in my business early on as well. And that's a common thing. And I found too, maybe you might agree, the life purpose path tends to bring us everything that we need to be able to level up, which means you're going to get triggered and all the shadows are going to be exposed, but it's worth it in the end. I don't know if you would agree as well.
I absolutely agree. Those triggers are portals for growth, and they shine the light on what needs our awareness, or they shine the light on denials, or things that just need to be integrated more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They show us where we're not free.
Yes.
Yeah. Beautiful. And we're talking a little bit about authenticity and realigning to our original design, which is a nice segue back into astrology and human design. And I know that this is part of your gift and offering to the world. And can you speak a little bit more to the importance of understanding your signature, understanding the cycles and how to work with your design?
Yeah, it's significant. Human design and astrology, they both function a little bit differently. They do have some similarities. I like to use astrology as the first foundation, and I like to layer human design on top of it. But regardless of how the systems function and offer insight and information, they help us really understand the authentic self that we don't know about, that we may not have experienced. We're like, well, I don't know what it means like to be my true self. Well, let me try to embrace this center and this gate of my human design, and let's just see what happens. I haven't had the opportunity to, for example, to really work with my gate 8, that comes out of the throat center. And so you could experiment with that and see who you are during those moments when you're testing out these qualities and you're participating in these different themes in your life. You get to experience yourself differently, even if you hadn't had the opportunity. So it really is a guide book or a blueprint to experiencing yourself in new ways. I know some people, you might run across this, they have resistance towards astrology or human design because they're like, I don't want it to define me. And I just tell them, no, it gives you options, and it just helps with understanding yourself. It just helps with understanding yourself and accepting yourself. When you can understand the patterns in your life, the pattern recognition, and the cycles. Oftentimes, I find like with my clients and myself, especially my clients, they let themselves off the hook for something, especially during if it was during a weird retrograde or Pluto and Capricorn, you're a Capricorn rising,
Yep.
they can kind of
Yep.
be like, oh, okay, it wasn't just me. There was a cycle. Not that we're blaming everything on the cycles, but the environment does matter. And if you can just hold that self-trust that you'll meet the next transit with the wisdom that you have, the energy that you have, the understanding that you have, then you'll be able to handle everything because these cycles just bring different environments, but you, the person, can navigate it gracefully. So it really is a powerful tool for self awareness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I think it supports the trauma healing journey because, at least using myself as an example, as a projector and a high achiever, a Capricorn rising, I was always driving and not realizing that I was exhausted and depleted at the same time. And being a projector tells you you're not supposed to put in as much time and effort. And so that was kind of the permission slip to chill out a little bit. And then, like you're saying, speaking to the cycles and understanding sometimes it's time to push and sometimes it's time to rest, and understanding the cycles of life in general for the collective whole, as well as for you personally. It can be really life changing to learn how to work with your design and the energies available. So, on that topic, we have a beautiful gift for our viewers. Do you want to tell them a little bit more about your offering and how they can find you?
Yes, yes. It's a short and sweet 15-minute free call with me, astrology and human design base. And I give you just one tool or one tip to help you get more clarity on your life purpose or even your current career. So It's not a lot of information. You don't have to know a lot about astrology. You just show up and receive, and you get that tool or tip, and then you have something to work with. And I think it's powerful because instead of getting 20 things to do, we just focus on one, and then we let that lead us to our next step. So that's my gift. It's the free 15-minute. And then you could find me at sacredsoulenergetics.com, and all my other stuff is there. I have a podcast as well. All the goodies are there as well.
Beautiful. And of course, everything will be linked below in the description box. So we look forward to sharing those gifts with you. Anything else you'd like to add today before we say goodbye?
Yeah, let's see. Let's see what's going to come through. I think my message that I just want to leave people with is just to accept yourself. And it might feel challenging, and that's okay. But if you could just set the intention to accept everything that you've been through, just like in my ceremony journey, the universe was asking me, "Do you accept this?" And I'd say yes, and then they would move me to the next portal or the next thing in that experience. I believe that life also works that way too. When something comes into our awareness, if we accept it and receive it, we can, there's a flow, there's a consistent flow that moves us forward. It's when we deny, reject, or suppress where things can get stuck. So just do your best to accept.
Yeah. Resistance equals suffering.
Yes.
May as well accept. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa, for sharing your time with you or with us. It was a pleasure to have you here, and I look forward to connecting with you again in the future.
Thank you, Rebecca. It was such a pleasure.